He is an author, a public speaker, storyteller, holistic justice advocate. I'm reading what he wrote. So, life coach. He's a homeschool parent of somebody here. And he's a senior program coordinator for the Prison Education Project, which does a large volunteer program all throughout the state of California and other places. And has worked throughout the United States, Scotland, Uganda, etc., prisons around all over the place. But I wonder if you wanted to talk a little bit, Ernst, maybe about what this project, you have this deep commitment to telling your mom's story and talking about her journey. If you might want to, I don't know, do you want to talk about that?
So one of the things is that when we look at this idea of society, right, and this idea of the incarcerated and those who support those who are incarcerated, you know, at the end of the day, after accountability in whatever form we decide is going to take place, what happens after that? And then part of that is, right, there's one of the classes I teach is called forgiveness and healing, right? So once we get to a stage of forgiveness, we have to deal with healing. And what we don't see in this current legal system, because it's not a justice system, it's a legal system, what we see is we don't see a lot of forgiveness and we don't see a lot of healing. And so when you dig deep, obviously, for me, I had to do a lot of transformative work on myself first to learn how to forgive myself and begin to receive forgiveness from others. But one of the critical components was that in our relationship, I could sense that there were things that I would never understand of what she went through. And I understood that the best I could do in trying to understand that so I can have a fuller sense of healing for her as well was, at the very least, I wanted to experience the journey she might have to take in traveling up to see me, right? Just to experience, in certain religious faiths or other activities, people take the journey of those who they want to experience. So for me, I think that was a big part of the healing for both of us, was to understand what was the sacrifice, what was the experience for her, and it definitely deepened our healing as well.
Should I ask you another question?
I don't know.
Well, oftentimes you talk about your own sort of relationship to this whole, what it was like when she came in to see you, sort of what that was like. I don't know if you want to talk about that or what this project has done in terms of your life. I mean, and I don't mean, that sounds bad because this is my project. This is our project together. But the question was, we talked about the ways that this has impacted your family in your commitment to retelling this story, how that changed the narrative that you and your family are able to live in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll take a swing at it. So, in the sense of the idea of the conversation, obviously, as Suchi said, one of the key components of my survival, of my sustenance, of my transformation was my mom. Her ability to not just not let go. In a system that can swallow you up, especially in California, this huge system. Back in '91, it was in full swing of just ramping up to what it would become in the '90s and 2000s. People were lost in the system. You were transferred constantly. You didn't know dates. You couldn't get information. And so it's easy for people to get lost in the system. And so for my mom too, she kept me alive not only for me, but she kept me alive to my family outside. Right? Even though it was hard for people to talk about it, for her, she would keep me alive for the family. So when I got out, it wasn't like I had disappeared. She kept me present in their world as well. And then the other thing was that in doing this project, the reality is we never talked about it as a family. People didn't know the story. They didn't know what happened. They just knew I got shot, went to prison. They didn't know what happened, what was going on, what she was going through. And so the opportunity came when I met Suchi and we talked about taking the journey. At first it was for me to kind of have this experience. But the more we talked about it, we realized it had a much bigger impact, right? It had a much bigger conversation at stake. And it allowed me to be able to then show it to family, and they were like, oh my God, I never knew, I didn't understand, I didn't know, like, I get it now, I'm getting it now. And I think that was important, and it dealt with a lot of healing within within my family, and my connection to the family. And so, to honor her, right, bring her flowers while she's alive, I think that was important as well. For everything that she did, right, this is her journey as well as it was mine. Every second I did, she was there, right? She experienced the difficulty as well. And I think that was an important part of the conversation. It's not just the incarcerated, it's those mothers, brothers, sisters, friends, family who support the incarcerated. They're there too. And like for my mom, there's ways she could not talk about it. And I think really what was shocking was when she did meet Suchi, like when we talked about it, there was some level we talked about it. And I was like, well, Suchi was like, well, I got to talk to your mom if we're going to do this. And I was like, you'll probably talk for about 10 minutes and she'll be done. She came in and about 4 hours later, which included them kicking me out of the room.
You said, I got to go get my son.
Yeah, he was
and Angee said, that's okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
He was at an event somewhere and I wanted to go pick him up. And so it was incredible that after for 4 hours, she got to pour out all of that experience, and I think that mattered for her. That was liberation for her as well, right? For me, get out and begin to get in touch with the world, that's one thing. But she didn't get that opportunity to lift. And so this was her chance to really get that off and to be recognized for all that she went through as well. And then the story for all those who are like her, all the mothers and all the other people who are like her as well.
So Angee, I don't know, is this on? Do I need, yeah, you hear? Okay. Angee, thank you for sharing your story with us.
And the family, that's the first time we got a child in prison. That was the first time, and that was a long time ago. And no one would believe that else could go to prison. Even I didn't believe so. But you went to prison and the prosecutor said 14 years. I said, 14 years? He said, no, 15 years.
That was what halftime.
And I said, no, I cannot go 15 years. And I paid the attorney some money. He said, no, that will not be enough.
It's another aspect of the system, right, is the ability that we have to
And
take
the
time.
family didn't understand. They said, you can throw away the key and come to live in Florida. That's where most of my family live in Florida now. And in New York, in Chicago. They live in the East Coast.
So they told you to move in with them and leave him in California.
No, I did not want to live in California because my husband was a doctor, his dad was a doctor, and at that time he was raised like a king. I remember that the family said, oh, you don't have to stay in California. but I did not want to live in California because that was too far.
You didn't want to leave California, right? Is that what you're saying? You wanted to stay.
I didn't
You
want
didn't want to leave Ernst, yeah. Didn't want to leave Ernst, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for staying.
Let me
Angee.
get to see.
Hold on.
Okay, my-
Thank you for staying there, yeah.
Hey.
You remember the first time you saw the dance in the studio?
I did, yeah, I cried because Ernst was that the first time we got someone in prison. And as I said, I didn't know. I didn't know that they could put people in prison for goodness or for anything, unless if you're really bad.
Thank you for sharing. So Tracy, this is Tracy, I just want to be sure I say the whole name, Tracy Bernardi Guzman. And just to update you, for those of you who don't know her, she was released from prison on October 13th, 2015, right? Spent 23 years inside, 7 years straight in solitary confinement. She was a program participant of the Community Partners in Action on the Inside and is now a CPA employee at the Waterbury Welcome Center. And she's also a Connecticut State Certified Recovery Support Specialist with Advocacy Unlimited, and she's an ACLU Smart Justice Leader. How did it feel, cutting right to the quick, what was it like seeing your mom inside and then leaving each other?
For me, it was awesome to have my mother's support and to have my mother there for me, because especially in the state of Connecticut, and probably everywhere else, they put prisons in really rural places where a lot of people cannot afford to go. They can't afford the travel, they can't afford the time off of work, the hours, the visiting hours, all of that. So just seeing her was amazing. It was having support from your mom is something that, you know, a lot of people could have had there been, you know, there's free phone calls in the state of Connecticut now, but there's not before. So just keep it in communication. If you lose that support, you're already, people who go to prison have trauma, right? Nobody just wakes up and goes to prison. You have trauma, escalates, and you end up somehow caught up in the system. And when you do, if you don't have support, it's so hard to do what corrections says it does, which is correct you. You become a better person. But that's a myth, right? The real thing is, do you have that family support? Do you have people that still love you and believe in you and don't abandon you because you made a mistake? You know, and me, I had my mom, and my mom was there for me. But every time she came, it was such trauma to leave the visit. You know, you see your mom, you're happy, you're with your mom, your mommy's little girl again. You can say whatever you want in visits, make her laugh, make my stepdad laugh, who passed away a year ago yesterday, who was instrumental in coming with her to visit me. But the thing about it was, next thing you know, you're strip searched, right? It's like, oh, you got a visit? Okay, we're gonna degrade you, and we're gonna remind you of who you are. You belong to us. We're gonna strip you. We're gonna, you know, make you bend over and cough and squat. And I know it's graphic, but it's something that people need to understand, because in a process of healing, now, you know, to me, showing my body, I went in as a 19-year-old kid. So to be forced to show your body every time you have a visit is like a punishment for having a visit. And to me, that was something, you know, I loved seeing my mom. It helped me in so many ways to be able to continue to have the relationship with her. But it was also, you touch your mom's hand, don't touch her. It's not touching. You can hug at the end of the visits. A disrespect towards your mom, a disrespect towards you, and you say, well, a lot of people say you did the crime, you do the time, but people don't understand that prison breaks down family ties. And without those family ties, it's so hard to reintegrate back into society successfully, especially when people living with a criminal record have so much collateral damage, the no's for jobs, the no's for this. If you don't keep the support that you had when somebody that loves you, that stands by you, anything can happen to you in prison, because the system knows you don't have support. Who's she gonna tell? But I always told mommy, I would get on the phone and bring up her phone bill to millions and just, mommy, call the administration, but as far as visits goes, it was amazing and it was traumatizing at the same time, because sometimes she didn't get in. Sometimes mom was come in and I'd excited and I'd be ready for visits and she didn't get in. Or sometimes something would happen and I'd end up in solitary confinement or whatever, and I know she was driving all that way to see me from Waterbury to Niantic, and here I was in solitary confinement for some investigation for something, or that was before my 7-year stay in solitary confinement. Even while I was in solitary confinement, the visits, I had to go to non-contact visits when I did get them, and I had to wear handcuffs. And so to have your mom see you sit in handcuffs and talk to you in handcuffs, and even she brought my nephew and tried to keep family, like your mom kept you alive for your family and kept them knowing who you were. She would try to introduce me to my nephew sat in visits as a baby, and I had to lie to him. For a long time, I told him I was at school. A long time, I told him I was just playing with fake handcuffs and I didn't have the key, so I couldn't get him off. And it was like, he would press himself against the glass, like those things that I always thought about, the things in the car window, like the Garfields that you stick against their window. I don't see too many today, but they used to be really popular when I was home before we had all this technology. And I would think of that because he would press himself against the window and I would press myself against the window, and it was just these kind of things. People don't realize that not only do you get incarcerated and punished for your mistakes, but your family is punished for your mistakes too. And it breaks down the family ties because a lot of people can't take it. A lot of people just won't go through it, don't want to see their child get yelled at in visits, talked down to, degraded. DOC is not a nice, not all of them, but there are those that do not care that that's your mom. They'll disrespect you right in front of your mom just because you're a number to them. And then there's the good ones, and thank God for those. But my mom really kept me alive. Her coming to see me, like navigating all that, like if it wasn't for this lady right here, I would be dead by now, and it would be by my own hand. And it's sad to say, but it's the truth, yeah.
Thank you so much for teaching us. Laura, thank you for supporting Tracy all that time. I know we talked last week, we had a beautiful meeting, all of us, and Laura talked about that it felt like every time going in that she herself was being strip searched, sort of that, even though that wasn't exactly the action, but that sense. And I wonder if you can share with us how often you went, how far you went, to sort of, what was that like?
Yeah, I tried to go once a week for a long time. For most of the time she was there. The last part of her time, I started going only once a month because I didn't have anybody to go with, so I used to go by myself. And yeah, sometimes I'd get there and I'd have a tank top on maybe. Oh, you can't come in like that, You'd get to the window, oh no, you can't come in with that shirt on. And then somebody else would walk in with like a tank top that was a dress. And that was okay. But my tank top wasn't okay. Like they seemed to make their own rules. And and then getting wanded if you had a belt on, or if you had even an underwire bra, you couldn't go in. But you got to learn those things after a while, so you didn't do it. But no. Like she said, I tried to bring like my grandson there because he was born while she was there. And I wanted them to know her, even though she was there. She was still, his aunt. And her brothers and sisters went every now and then when they could. But yeah, it was, like she said, seeing how they treated her kind of made me almost like, well, should I go? Am I hurting her by going? Or, but I knew she needed me, so I always went.
Yeah. Did you, Angee has talked about the fact that that a lot of people didn't know about the situation she was in. She didn't, a lot, and we've talked with other women who also visited with Angee, with their loved ones. So were you in a community, or were you able to talk with people about it?
Yeah, my whole family knew about it.
Your family.
Yeah, my whole family, and they supported me through it.
Amazing. That's great.
Yeah, we've always been that way. We just talk about everything. We don't hide stuff from each other.
This is Deb's turn. Amazing. Yeah. I was going to ask Deb to talk about community partners in action. So this is Deb Rogala, am I saying it right?
You are.
Yeah,
Nice.
who has been such a beautiful caretaker for us on this trip. Thank you so much for everything you've done. And we wanted to know what you all are doing in this community, and of course how we can support you, and if you might share with us something.
Hi everyone. Just really want to thank everyone for being here today. Really important topic. And one of the things that you can do, you're doing right now, is participating in this conversation. CPA has been around since 1875, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because we still have lots of issues in our community. I really want to thank Ernst and Tracy and the two moms up here. When you look at the film today and you see that there are 2.3 million people incarcerated, I'm ashamed to be part of that system and part of that community that creates that. But then you look at all of the other people that are impacted by that, and the families. Initially it's the individual that's incarcerated, that's the forgotten person. And then as a community, we forget that there's a whole family that supports the individual that is incarcerated. And fortunately, there is that piece. And thank you for bringing the backpacks today. We had an opportunity to see our reentry welcome center today. I was thrilled to give a tour to Angee and Ernst and Jeremiah. And so they got an idea of what CPA is doing, welcoming people when they come back to their community, which is a huge piece for all of us. We need to welcome. Good?
Yeah.
Nice. Anybody have any water? Where's your water?
Right.
All right, you're good. And so really it's about thanking you for being here, listening to people, meeting people that have been incarcerated, and they're the real pieces of this story today. Their strength, their determination, and the families that have supported them for years and years and years, and what they had to go through in order to continue to love their family. And so, Suchi, I really just appreciate you bringing this to Connecticut and the work that you've done. These are the things that make a difference. Yeah. Amazing. And Jeremiah, you ran to the bathroom, but do you have anything to say about your screenshot? You've been wanting to hold the microphone, I know that.
Yeah, I just want to use it.
Okay. Do you want to sing to us or anything?
Oh, I just wanted to use one of these things.
How was it? I'm going to ask you a question. How was it for you to see your dad and to see your grandmother and to see you on film today?
I was mostly trying to estimate my age, and
Yeah?
I'm pretty sure that was back when I was 5, I think. Right, Dad?
When we made the film, you were 6.
6.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
6.
you were 6.
That was pretty close.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
close. Yeah. You're old
Nice.
now. Now you're old.
Do you want to say anything to the movie stars today?
You want
Okay.
All right. Oh, we're good.
Yay, applause of.
Nice job. Nice job. First time opening the mic.
You did that. So thank you for being here, and we hope that you we're really, as you can see from the last part of that film, I know people think that the film is over when the dance is over. For us, it's this conversation and our activism around mass incarceration and imagining a world where we prioritize education and homes and houses and food and community gardens and art centers and family and community over incarceration. That we encourage all of us to find the ways to build community and change the narrative around incarceration. Brian Stevenson, who probably some of you have heard of, from the Justice Education Initiative, speaks about these beautiful points. He talks about getting proximate, being close. If you're like, oh, I've never thought about it, find out, get in there, be close. He also talks about this idea of being uncomfortable and being willing to be uncomfortable. Go for it. Be uncomfortable. Put yourself in that position, and change the narrative for people who you're in community with. So that idea, and then of course be hopeful. That we have to be hopeful. That goes all around, doesn't it? Right now in this time,
For sure.
so much of what we're losing, but we have to be hopeful. We have to be active. We have to be in conversation. We have to change the narrative. And so we thank you for joining us. And we've been showing this film and we haven't been performing it in person, but we've been showing the film. That is something that we can do with this as a tool for conversation and changing narrative. So if any of you have, a gathering, a church group, an organization that you're with, a school group, we want to be there. We've been doing this on Zoom for the past 2 years. This is the first time we've seen it on a big screen. That was like, whoa, what's that? That was terrible. But, so we appreciate you being here and seeing it on the big screen. But also, if you feel like, or you have something in your mind like, wow, I should show that here or there, we'll be there. We've done Zoom.
We have some.
We've done Zoom all over the place. So yeah, we have cards, and we're happy to invite you to do that. We also, Ernst is an author, and he has his books if you're interested in checking those out. We have merch. Yeah, we have stuff. Yeah, so thank you so much for being here. Change the narrative, be radical, do it.
I also wanted to just recognize the staff that are here from CPA.
Oh, she liked it on screen.
You liked it on screen?
Oh, you liked it on the screen.
Yeah,
me
we like
too.
seeing you on screen. That was great. Just want to thank CPA staff, CPA board members that are here. I think for me, I've been with CPA for 28 years, and it's become my life, my passion. And that's the same for the staff at CPA. Our executive director, Beth Hines, is here and has allowed us to be part of these things because it is the mission of CPA and it's what we believe in. And so you're right, we've got to change that narrative. And so just really want to thank everybody for being here. Is Ann here? Yeah, Ann's here.
Oh, and
Yeah. Ann.
thank you, Ann.
And Julia. Julia did a lot of back. Where's Julia? Is she gone? Oh, there she is.
Thank you.
She's behind one of the backpacks.
Yeah.
And thank you, Will, and Real Art Ways
Real
folks
Art.
for having us
Yeah,
here.
everybody.
We really, and Noelle. Anyway, so we should probably, Q&A.
Mhm.
Anybody have a question? We could talk for a couple of minutes. That sounds a good idea, and then we have to scooch out of here.
Yes.
Anybody have any
Question, comments?
question, thoughts? We'll let that settle for a second.
got
some. There we go.
Please, yeah.
Hi, I
You
just
need
want
the
to
mic?
thank you, and it was wonderful. I was wondering what the name of your project is, I didn't catch it. I
Yeah.
know you changed from Judith Warren, did you change, or are you an offshoot?
No, I have no relation. We have no relationship to Judy Doran. I did meet her a few decades ago, so that was a nice thing. No, we have no. Judy was kind enough to be a supporter on this on getting us here.
CPA
But no,
works
no.
with Judy Doran a lot.
Yes, but you're right. That's a logical connection. But our project is called Dancing Through Prison Walls, and Dancing Through Prison Walls. So if you kind of look that up, but I can give you cards. I actually made cards. They're cool cards too.
Yes,
So
they are.
I hope that you'll take them. Yeah, Dancing Through Prison Walls, and we've done a number of projects since we started doing this choreographic residency. My cousins are leaving. Love you. Love you. Yeah, so we've done a lot of different projects as part of this work in Dancing Through Prison Walls. Thanks for asking.
Larice?
My question is, how much did it cost each trip, round trip? And how
Nice.
much
Good
money is exchanged over the year?
And she's like, no, I can't talk about
Not even, but
that. Maybe Laura.
it less than now.
It costs less than it does now.
Less than now.
So when you guys did for the movie, how much did it cost you?
Oh, for us?
Oh,
Oh, for us, this was actually a really good project for us because it didn't cost that much money. It didn't cost us much. It's all public transportation. So I think our each way was maybe, the round trip for us maybe was $100 each.
I think so.
Or maybe,
About
maybe
lodging.
100 each, and then we had to pay for lodging. We had to rent a car. Actually, it's going up, isn't it, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
I was gonna
but
say,
$500 a trip.
I would say,
Yes.
all together for the both
So
of us
times
with
14
food.
years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
14.
Right.
Oh yeah,
$500 a trip.
yeah,
yes,
That's a month
yeah,
for 14 years.
yeah. It's 12.
That's
Yeah,
that's
Good.
millions of dollars.
yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And
Was there any way to get from point A to B direct?
no,
no,
unless if you
You
had
drove.
a car, if you drove and you had a car, you could drive. But Angee, for example, didn't have a car and didn't have anyone to drive or in that. There might have been some months when she did, of course, she said, but yeah.
And when you had a car, how long did it take?
The drive up there, I've driven it.
Yeah.
We've driven it.
several
It's
hours.
400 miles, so it's about
Oh,
6
that's
hours.
Yeah, just to
7
kind of
hours.
address your question, you're right, there is a big expense to it because, like you say, it's just even if you do the public transportation, she would come and stay for the whole weekend. So that's 3 days in the hotel, food for herself while she's there, then getting back and all of that. And that's why we said in the movie, in the film, that we said that we were fortunate enough that she had family and friends to finance her trip because that's an important part of it. A lot of people who are at that distance can't afford that type of, and then the phone calls, $5 for 15 minutes or whatever it was at that time. And, it adds up and then it just is very expensive. So, and then the ones who are getting most of the expense, right? Once you get into the arena, the phone calls and the food and the vending machines and all that was the police officers union, right? So a lot of the money wasn't necessarily being used to our benefit, right? And so it was very expensive. And eventually, over the years, she built a cohort of people. So then they were like, oh my gosh, Angee, I'll drive up with you. I'll take you. I'll come down to LA and get you. And so she got fortunate that way, but it was still very expensive. As a general rule, there's a huge expense with mass incarceration that isn't talked about.
There's also the fact that people get to the prison and they're not let in for some reason. It could be a moment, but it could also just be there's a lockdown. You get all the way up there. And one beautiful thing about community that I know Angee built inside and outside was these women who were visiting their beloved ones inside. They created this incredible community. I only know that because we've met with some of those women and had sort of gatherings with these women. And they're like, yeah, you went to rock concerts with them, as I recall. Yeah, she's like, hey, I got locked up, and I went to, who did you go see? I mean, these women,
Snoop Dogg.
they were holding each other. They were cooking for each other and taking care of each other. And at a certain point, they built this beautiful community. And I say the women because it was these women who were visiting in these institutions. So I know I've heard some real rock out stories. So it's that beautiful, yeah.
Could you talk about like a day in the life for those of us that have never been inside a prison, and just to give us a sense of what it was like to be inside? You talked about the sights and the sounds.
Oh, maybe, or Tracy too.
Oh, Tracy.
Yeah, maybe Tracy.
Both
of you.
Yeah,
I'll go first. Just
everybody
real
get
quick.
your coffee.
I mean, how do you quantify? One of the things she talked about was this idea that this is more.
Tag team.
All right.
Yeah, you can jam.
There we go. One of the ideas is that, when you get put into this system, especially if you've never been in it, there is a psychological aspect of it that you have to get to. As she spoke about the strip searches, right? If you've never gone through that, you go through that once. But when you go through that constantly, right, there's a numbing of your soul that you have to get to. And this is why this is important about family, is because that brings back that feeling of your humanity. Because in that environment, you begin to get used to being called a number. You begin to understand that both sides have a game for you, whether it's the officers have you pegged to be some way, or those who are incarcerated with you want you to be part of their chaos and deception. So the reality is that over that time, the family connections are important. The phone calls are important. I mean, I ran up her bill. I can't even imagine what her expenses were, where I called literally on an every other day basis, right? I mean, her phone bills were $300, $400, $500 a month. So going back to expenses, right? We begin to add that up. And so just to give you an idea of the day is like you wake up, depending on what you do. I try to break from the system, but I'll explain that another time. But, they tell you when to get up. You got to hurry up and get up. If you're late, you don't get to eat. Then they tell you to go to work or go to class or whatever you're doing. And then you have to get there. And then there's constantly you're dealing, I call them the crash test dummies, which are the people who may not have family support. They may have no other purpose than to try to get you in trouble, to try to target you, to try to, especially when you get closer to the house. There's a thing of once people know you're getting closer to home, they think that they're going to make you more of a target. So because they think you're not going to push back, because who wants to stay, right? And so there's all this navigation you constantly have to do. And in the film, that part of where we talked about the visit, right? There was parts of where it's like you're stressed out because you don't know what's going to happen. You're looking out the window. You're trying to look down the hallway. You're trying to pretend everything is cool. And then finally, when you get to the visiting room, then it's like you got to shake all of that off. And then you have to kind of like, as my mom said, put on a face. And she's putting on a face. We both know we're putting on faces. And you go out there for a minute, and Hope, as Tracy spoke about, you can't hug too long. You can't, in California, they took the tables and they reduced them down all the way to the ground because they said that there was issue. And it was like, they want to watch every move and everything you're doing constantly. You're an incredible level of surveillance. And then as it was said, you put on that face and then you go right back in, right? And then you have to numb yourself again to go back in. So it's a really intentional psychological twist for people. And the longer you're in that environment, the harder that it is to break out if you don't have that tether of family to keep you connected out there. Because once you step out, there's you're in an environment where you don't even get to touch people, right? And then all of a sudden you come out, even to this day, sometimes I suffer from that feeling of just being, you can't even touch people, or you don't even want to be touched.
Tracy.
Right?
So for me, I can say, like in the women's prison in Connecticut, It's very, very difficult. Every day you wake up, you have to have your bed made by a certain time. If you don't, that's a ticket. If you have where there's good time, I was under an old law where I got good time. I got more good time than most people get now. And the problem with that was when you get in trouble for not making your bed, you can lose way more good time than I've lost, especially during the time that I was in solitary confinement, maybe 120 days at a time. And you're going home. I was going home in 2014. I was going home in 2000, and then I didn't end up going home until 2016. And so a lot of it is it's almost like this video game that you're playing, but it's real life. You can go, you can try to enroll yourself in programs. There's long waiting lists for programs. You get in the programs and you can start feeling better about yourself. One of the things that I did during the end of my incarceration was to better myself was to get involved in college programs. And so you have to ring you have a buzzard in your room or intercom, and you have to ring your intercom, which you're not allowed to ring during emergencies. If they called school and you didn't get out of your room, and then you have to fight with them to go to school, and then you have to come back, or even to go to school. I've heard guards say, well, why do you get a free education? My child can't get a free education. And I would say, well, can your child pass the entrance exam? Because I still had to do that. There's things that, you can't look at it like we're getting this free education. The guards need to look at it as these people are here and we want them to go home and we want them to be successful. And in order to do that, they need this structure of things. But they would impede those things because they were jealous that we had those things. Why are you getting a free education? Why are you going to art class? Why are, speaking of Judy Dorwin, there were times when I was going to be in Judy Dorwin's performances and they would stop you. They would I would get served tickets while I was at the performance, and then if you had tickets, you couldn't stay in these groups. So then you lose these groups, and these are the groups that are teaching you to express yourself and to talk about your issues and not to react. And so for me, a lot of incarceration, unfortunately, in the state of Connecticut is the very people that are entrusted with your lives doing everything they can possibly do to reassure that you will return. After doing 23 years incarcerated, as I said, I went in right after I turned 19. The day before my release, I was told by a guard, "We'll see you when you get back, Bernardi." And the thing about that is, it's so detrimental to your growth, to your healing. If you're traumatized, and another thing is room searches. Room searches, they will go in your room, they will search your room, and a guard says something to you and you say something smart back to them because you're human and sometimes you can't take it, and next thing you know, they're in your room, and not only are they stripping your cell apart, throwing all your stuff into the center of the floor with your roommate stuff, they're taking half of your stuff that they're saying now you can't have, and then some of them would do the nice thing and tie your sheets up in knots so that you would be there until these grown men tying sheets in tight knots and tell you would sit in your room for hours trying to untie your sheets. There was just so much cruel behavior within the system, and when those things are taken care of and the staff in the facility is all on one page, because like I said, there are good staff, there are lights in the dark, because if there weren't, most people would kill themselves. When you talked about us not being able to touch each other, there was actually a girl who men slap each other on the butt for football and stuff like that. They were at commissary, and people develop a rapport with each other, but we're not allowed to touch each other. And this girl slapped another girl playing around, and they took her to SEG, and they investigated her for what's PREA in the state of Connecticut. And she was going to be put on the sexual registry for slapping another girl on the ass, so she killed herself. And these are the things that happen. Another girl went to solitary confinement. Her mom died. Somebody hugged her. They sent them both to solitary confinement. So, you know, even me, I was a cutter. I always cut my wrist. I didn't know how to deal with my reality. I cut my arms on a regular basis, and I was punished for that for many, many years. Some of the reason that I stayed as long as I did was because that good time was taken away. Instead of addressing trauma and treating trauma, you know, people are contributing to it. And the cool fast forward is now I'm home, right? And I was a participant, as Suchi said, I was a participant in Community Partners in Action resettlement program, and I just have to give them a shout out here because I have this opportunity. It was amazing. They paid for my driving lessons. Like, I had such sensory overload that I was so scared to be on the highway, so scared. My mom was scared to drive with me, you know, people are still scared to drive with me. But the thing is, you know, I'm driving. You know, I had a fire in my house. They helped me. They helped me so much throughout everything. You know, Deb, Beth, everyone at CPA. Now I get to work at CPA. And the cool thing about that is I know exactly what people coming home need. So, like, I can be that person. Like, you know, as soon as they walk in, they look at me like, oh, this is the little white administrative assistant. She doesn't know anything about anything. And then I'm like, well, I did 23 years. They're like, oh, okay. Like, she understands us. And we immediately develop a rapport where I can help people get jobs. I can help people, you know, have confidence, have people understand, like, hey, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. You're going to be, you know, Arrested Development. I was 19 years old when I went in. I came home and I was so immature. And fortunately, I ended up getting in a relationship who I'm now married to, who has 5 children. So I had to mature really quick. And, you know, I became a mom and I got all the things that I missed out on, except I never had a biological child. But the point of what I'm trying to say is I couldn't have done that without, number one, mommy, and number 2, Community Partners in Action. You know, you guys helped me so much to become who I am today and who I'm becoming.
That's going to be a perfect time. You may have noticed I'm working my way.
Okay. So
I'm sorry to have to tell you, but you're going to be able to stay here and go outside and hang out for as long as you want and talk for as long as you want. But in about 3 minutes, we're going to start another movie here. So I have to ask you not only to leave, but I have to ask you to leave quickly. Thank you so much. And then stay. Leave and then stay. Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody.